Hi folks, this is Adam DeMont from ForTechSupport, back with another Power Automate tutorial. In this lesson, you'll learn how to generate digital versions of business cards to send to your clients. We will not cover how to design the cards themselves, since that will be different for every organization. Plus, I'm not an expert in HTML or CSS. This lesson will rather be about how to generate cards once you have a template designed. If an employee changes job titles, you want to create a new card for them with the new job title. You can do that in just a few seconds. Say you have a bunch of new employees starting, you want to create new business cards for all of them. You can do that in just a matter of minutes, depending on how many employees you have starting. And then for the last part of this tutorial, I'll show you how you can create a digital button on your phone in the form of a widget to quickly send your digital business card to a client that you, or a possible client that you might have just met while networking. So with that being said, let's get started with our tutorial. Now, before you get started on creating your own specific business cards for your organization, you'll want to make sure you have your template prepared. And it's best if you separate the CSS from the HTML because we'll be composing that in two different steps in our flows. So once you have that prepared, you can continue creating these flows if you want to just follow along anyway, so you know the process of how these three flows work. You'll be prepared to set them up once you have your template designed. So let's go ahead and get started and go over to Power Automate. I'm going to go ahead and blow this up here. And once you're on Power Automate, you'll want to click on Create on the left side. And we're going to be creating 3 instant cloud flows. So you want to choose this for each one and give it a name for each one. We're also going to choose the same trigger for each of our flows, manually trigger a flow, this first one, flow button. I've already created all 3 flows, so I'm not going to create new ones, but that's how you'll start the creation. I'm just going to hop over to the first one here. As you can see, I've named it Generate a Digital Business Card for an Employee. We've also got generate digital business cards for employees. And then the third one is email a digital business card to a new contact. So let's get started with the first one here to create or to generate a digital business card for an individual employee. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this so you can see the steps. Once you've created the first flow and named it and added your trigger, you want to expand the trigger step and add inputs. And I've used text for all of these except for email. You can actually use text for email also if you want. You don't need to include all these fields if they're not on your business card, but if some fields, some employees have them filled out and some don't, you can also make those fields optional. Like say if some employees don't have a LinkedIn account and you want to include LinkedIn on the cards, for the people that do, you can make this field optional also. So once you have your triggers set up with the relevant information or variables, we can create our 3 actions for this first flow. We're going to compose CSS, compose the HTML. The HTML will have variables from the outputs of the CSS and also from the trigger. And then we're going to create an attachment in an email and send it to the person we're creating it for. So in the CSS, you can see I've just got my code here to match the style of my business card. The next step is to add the HTML code, and you can see I've got variables in here. So in between the style tag, I've selected outputs from the CSS step here, just by selecting this in between those tags. Same thing down here from the trigger step. I've added name, job title, and location on the left row class. And then the right row class of the card, I've added the contact information, phone, email, and LinkedIn. And for the title of each one, it also shows the person's name. So call name, email name, and visit name's LinkedIn page. The last link will be static for whatever your website is. And then I've got the logo on the back there, but your HTML will be different than mine. So this is just the structure of the flow that I'm showing you here. So you add the CSS, you add the HTML with the variables, and then we send the email. In the to field, we're selecting the email from the trigger. In the subject, you can create whatever you want. I've just added static text of business card 4 and then the name variable from the trigger. So it'll say business card 4, the person's name in the subject, and then I just have static information in the body right now, but if I wanted to add, let's say, hi, and then the person's name, I could do that too. Just go here, hi, and then go to our dynamic content and select the name from the list. And that'll be in the greeting of the email. If you're sending this email from a shared mailbox, let's say from Human Resources, you can put that in here. And then for the attachment, we're gonna give it a name. I gave it a prefix of business card dash, and then the person's name, and then the extension .html. For the outputs of the attachment, we're selecting the HTML outputs from the previous step here. So make sure you select HTML outputs instead of CSS for the attachment. And that's it for the first flow. So once you have that all set up, I'll show you how it will work in action. Let me see here. Let me go back. I don't need to save that. I'm just going to run this. And we'll see all our fields here from the trigger. I'm going to go ahead and fill these out. Systems admin. I'm going to send this to myself instead of the person, instead of John Doe, this made up person. That way we can see what the email looks like with the attachment. And then I'll put my LinkedIn here. Let's see. We'll hit run flow. And should already be finished. And if I go in here, we can see each step finished successfully. And we can see a lot more information if we open and expand. We can see the actual output from the CSS in this step, which would be the same as the inputs, but this would look different. It would actually show the information that we entered. So if I go down here to the HTML, you can see it's got my email and all my other information in there that I entered. Just a made up number, John Doe. So those are all the steps. Let me show you what the email looks like too. I'm just gonna open this off screen real quick, one sec. And here's what it looks like. This is just in the web version, but let's go ahead and open this. Hold on one sec, it's opening off screen. There we go. And you can see it's got the name up here, business card dash John Doe. John Doe here, systems admin, phone, email, LinkedIn. This you can just remove from the template if you have something like this that won't apply to everybody necessarily. But if you have a lot of people who have certifications or other items you want to put here in the middle, you can use that as a template and just change each individual one after the fact. So that's our first flow. Let's move on to the second one. I'm going to close this out, and this too. And we can close this. So for the next one, we'll want to work with an employees list. This can be stored wherever you want. It could be an Excel table, it could be a SharePoint list, it doesn't matter. I'm working off an Excel table for this example. I've created a template here, or a sample here. You can also download this sample from my blog article that this video is attached to. If you want to follow along with this tutorial without using your own employee list. And then it's going to pull each row from this table and create a business card for each one of these people based off of the information in that row. So to do that, we're going to go up to the second flow here. You're going to start it the same way by creating an instant cloud flow, giving it a name. You can give it something like this also. And then once it loads, we don't have to do anything with the, oh, hold on, let me refresh this real quick. Once the flow loads, you can leave the trigger alone. We're not going to add any inputs on that because we're going to get our inputs from the Excel table. So for the first action, if you've already created that first flow that I went over, you can copy the same CSS from there that matches your style and paste it in this step as well. Once we have our CSS created, we're going to list the rows present in our Excel table. So wherever you have that Excel table stored, make sure you select that Excel table or Excel file and the table in it. If it's SharePoint list, you can do that different. You can get the items from the list and select the SharePoint list that you're working with. Once you have the rows listed, we're going to create two actions for each row. We're going to create HTML for the row, and then we're going to create a HTML file based off of the information from that row and the CSS. So you'll notice this is similar to our first flow for the HTML, other than these coming from Excel instead. So the output for the CSS will look the same as long as you're giving that action step the same name, just CSS. And you can see it says outputs CSS, or outputs and the name of that action. Down below here, we're going to select name, job title, and location from our Excel variable. So when I click in here, you can see those are all listed here under list rows present in the table. And then further down for the right row, same thing, but we're selecting from our Excel table instead of the trigger step. So once we have the HTML, it's simple. You just create a file based off of that, and wherever you're going to save it to, I'm just going to save it to the same location I'm pulling, or I already saved the first one to. I'm going to give it the same prefix with the name, .html, and we're going to select the outputs from the HTML action again. And that's it for this one. So once you have that flow saved, we can go ahead and test that out. So as you can see, I've got 28 rows here, since the first row is the headers. So we should get 28 business cards. And let me pull up the folder that they're going to go to so you can see them being created in action. So right here, you can see I've got the folder pulled up. And let me go ahead and expand that. I'm just going to rearrange this stuff real quick. Okay, so generate digital business cards. We're going to run this. Run. And this is only going to take, well, the first time I tested it, 26 seconds. As you can see, they're already starting to be created here. And if I go into my flow, I can see it running. It says 28 here that it's going through. So once we have 28 in there, we should see this finish in the flow. Yep, it ran successfully. And then I can go through each one of these if I wanted to troubleshoot if there was an error. But since there's no errors, there's no need to dig through all this information. Let's go ahead and look at our examples. So I'm just going to open a few of these. And let's do that one. And you can see they all have the same back. If I hover over it, they have different information here and different information here. So there's one, there's two, and there's three. And there's 25 more here as well. So that's how you create them in bulk if you're doing a bunch of business cards at once. Let me go ahead and close that and exit out of all of these. We don't need the employees list anymore, so I'm going to close that. And we're done with this one too. So we're down to our last flow. You create it the same way once again, instant cloud flow, manual trigger button. And for this one, you can name it email a digital business card to a new contact, or whatever name you want to give the flow. Once the flow loads, you're going to want to expand the trigger and create variables for the new contact. So we're going to want to collect a little bit of information. Yours might differ from this, but I just chose basic fields: first name, last name, company, phone, email, and then how long we want to delay before sending this email. So, and I set it for the number of hours, but as you can see in our delay step here, you have the option of changing it between these. I've set it to seconds for now, so we don't have to wait a long time to see this example work when we're ready to test it. So once you have your, and let me go over this again. For email, you can select the email field or text, they'll work the same way. And for delay, I decided to choose number here. Text will probably still work though. So in this step, we're actually going to create the contact in Outlook. We're going to grab our business contact, our business card from OneDrive. We're going to put a delay before we send our business card to our new contact. That way, if you just met the new contact, you punch their information into your app here, and then hit run. It doesn't send them the email as soon as they're walking away from you. It delays it for however long you set it to delay it to. So if you punch in, their information and set it to 6 hours, this flow will run as soon as you hit run, but it'll stop here for 6 hours. And then once 6 hours is up, it'll send this email with the attachment to that person. So let me collapse those real quick and we can see the create contact step. And if you have multiple folders for contacts in Outlook, you'll want to select that from this drop-down list. But if you don't, it should just say contacts for the default. For given name, I've put both first name and last name in there with a space in between, so it shows their full name. For the phone, I've added that to home phones item. For email address, I've added the email there. For company name, I've added the company. If you've collected any other fields from your trigger when you create your flow, make sure you collect or add those variables in these fields as well. Once we've created our contact in Outlook, we're going to grab the business card wherever it's stored in OneDrive. I just have a demo here, so we're pulling a sample card. You don't have to set any advanced options here. Once we have our file, we're going to set the delay. Like I said, I have this normally set to hours, but you can set it to however many or whatever unit of measure you want, and then make the count the delay in the trigger. So if you set it for day, you want to wait 24 hours, you can just set 1 day or 24 hours. It'll work the same way. Once we've got through our delay step, it's ready to send the email. And to do that, we're going to use the email address from the trigger step in the to field. You can create whatever subject and body you want. I've just made some sample ones here. Nice meeting you today, and the subject. You can add their name if you want. I've added that in the greeting in the email instead. Hi, and then their first name. It was nice to meet you today. I just want to send you a quick message to give you my contact information. Please feel free to reach out anytime. And then it has my signature. And then for the attachment, we're going to go into advanced options, and you can give it a name. I just gave it a static name here, so it's always the same. And then I'm selecting the, this is file content from the get file content step here. So when I select that, I'm going to save that. So once you have yours saved, we can go ahead and test it out. And for this test, I've actually created widgets on my phone already, so we can use a button from our phone to send the email. So I'm I'm gonna pull up my phone screen here, and you can see I've got a button for each one of these, but we're just gonna test out this last one here to email the card to a new contact. So to do that, I'm gonna tap here. That'll open up the Flow app, as long as it's installed on your phone, and we can go ahead and enter our information here. So once you have all your information entered in here for the new contact that you've met, and you want to enter your delay here, I've just added 15 since we have this set to seconds right now, but if you have it set to hours and you want to delay it 6 hours, you would enter 6 here instead. So before I hit run, I'm gonna change my email address up here, so it goes to, or this goes to me instead. And then once I hit the run flow button, we'll see it go through successfully. So let me go ahead and stop. And we can see it ran successfully. We got a green check mark there on the flow button, and that should disappear. Okay, now we can minimize this. Go ahead and back out of this, and we'll see it run here 12 seconds ago. It's still running because of the delay, but it should be finished by the time this loads. There we go, 15-second delay. It sent the email. It's also created the contact, so let me pull up both. So you'll remember I entered John Doe for the person's name. And let me go ahead and open that in a new tab. And as you can see, we got our contact there. It says John Doe, but it's got my name, face there since I used my email address. It's already pulled my information, but you can see I've got the home phone listed here as the one I entered. I probably should have set up a different email just for this example, but you can see it adds the person's name as long as they're not a person that's already in there apparently. But now that we know that, let's check out the email that it sent. Here we go, nice meeting you today. It's got an attachment here and a simple email. Let me go ahead and open this. Here we go. Okay, yeah, attachments, business card, my name, and all the HTML and CSS from our card. So that's the third flow when you're ready to send it from your phone using a digital button on there. So that wraps up our tutorial for today. If you liked what you saw, please give me a like, share, or subscribe. Anything helps, and I'll be back with another video hopefully next week. Take care.